Yo, shit, I thought I mastered the plan. Until I heard 3 knocks. Next question I was asking a man, how much longer in the back of this van? Got my fingers all swollen from these cuffs that you clacked in my hand. Got the nerve, man, to ask for the grams. You done kicked down my door for this package of grams. Damn. Now I'm walking up these corner stairs, and I'm thinking to myself, where's the support and the prayers? I've done sold drugs in New York for some years. The shit that I sold, niggas lost their career. And what's endorsing my fear? It's going upstate, motherfuckers up north for some years. When Uncle Ricky caught my first big charge, but with Cam I brought my first big car. And now the flow is tremendous. I be thinking of the days I was on the road with the rented.
Harlem, stand up.
Juelz Santana,
Jim Jones, Freekey, my man Frost, Nino.
The story of the Diplomats, aka Dipset, starts in Harlem, New York. The core group consists of Camron, Juelz Santana, Jim Jones, and Freekey Zeekey. Though Dipset grew to prominence in the early 2000s, the group was a thing long before that. Members Camron, Jim Jones, and Freekey Zeekey have known each other since their childhood and adolescent years. Before Dipset, members were affiliated with other groups like BBO, Children of the Corn, etc. But the iteration of what we know today as Dipset started with Camron. In an interview with DJ Who Kid in 2016, Camron spoke on the creation of the group. Before his record deal with Epic Records, the group went by the name of The Legacy. This was the name of the group for a minute, but in an interview with Red Bull Music Academy in 2012, Jim Jones explained that Camron said that the name The Legacy was already taken. Because of this, they had to go back to the drawing board and the name The Diplomats was chosen. By definition, a diplomat is a person appointed by a national government to conduct official negotiations and maintain political, economic, and social relations with another country or countries. Camron specifically liked the name because he describes diplomats as doing whatever they want, wherever they want. I don't want to go too deep into Camron's own story because I've already recently done an almost 50-minute video on his story. Link in the description if you would like to know more. I'll do my best to condense his story as much as possible. Essentially, after basketball did not work out for Camron, his friend Mace helped him get into the music industry with Cam first writing for Lil C's on the song Crush on You. Mace was signed to Bad Boy Records, with that label's flagship artist at the time being Biggie Smalls. Instead of Mace taking Cam to Diddy, the founder of Bad Boy Records, he wanted to take Cam to Biggie because he knew that Biggie would do right by him. Camron ended up impressing Biggie with his rapping skills, which led Biggie to want to sign him. Unfortunately, Biggie was tragically killed in March of 1997, which seemingly stopped these plans. This was until Camron got in contact with Lance Rivera. Labels had been lining up to sign Cam due to his buzz from his appearances on DJ Clue tapes, but Camron wanted to go with Lance because Lance was Biggie's right-hand man. Now under Lance's label Entertainment, Cam dropped his debut album Confessions of Fire in July of 1998. This peaked at number 6 on the Billboard 200 chart, selling 107,000 copies in its first week. Jim Jones appears on the album credited as Jimmy Jones. He appears on the track Me, My Moms, and Jimmy.
Cam, this rap shit, how you know I love game, right? It's like I got a habit, gotta keep the drug game. Why? Until we blow up with that on platinum dunk fame.
After the release of Confessions of Fire, Cam started to work on his second album, which was originally titled the Rough album. It was initially set to release in 1999, but it got pushed back, and the album ended up being called SDE, or Sports, Drugs, and Entertainment. With the release of SDE, things had changed this time around for Camron because he was now no longer under Entertainment. In interviews, Cam has said that Lance Rivera lost his deal with Epic Records, which was why his contract was absorbed by the label. SDE was released in September of 2000, peaking at number 14 on the Billboard 200 charts, selling 73,000 copies in its first week. Jim Jones is once again credited as Jimmy Jones on the album, with his appearance on the tracks Do It Again, Why No, and My Hood. Jim does not have a verse on My Hood, but he appears on the outro of the track. On the outro, Jim says,
Dipset, Killer Cam, Jim Jones, Freekey, woo!
As you can hear, Jim Jones shouted out Dipset, but only mentioned himself, Cam, and Freekey Zeekey because that was who originally was in the group. Juelz Santana came after the group was originally formed, but he does appear on SDE. He appears on the track Double Up. Camron met Juelz through a cousin of Juelz named Tobe, who knew Camron as well. In my video about Juelz Santana, I went into detail about how Juelz rapped for Cam in the back of a car right after Cam woke up from his sleep. Camron did not initially show any emotion to Juelz's bars, but he was impressed by young Juelz Santana, who at the time was in a rap duo. After talking with his partner Malik about Cam only wanting to sign him out of the two, the decision was made that it was best for Juelz to start running with Cam solo. But after SDE was released, Camron started to learn and understand the music business more. There was a female working at Epic Records who took a liking to Cam and schooled him to the game. Through this female, Cam learned that he was getting screwed over by Epic Records and they were playing with his money. This is when he decided to reach out to Dame Dash, who he had known from back in the day. They were not cool with each other at the time, but they hashed things out. Of course, Dame Dash at this time was one of the 3 co-founders of roc-a-fella Records, who were huge at this time, especially after the release of Jay-Z's song Hard Knock Life in 1998. To put it in perspective, Camron was only 2 albums in on a 7-album deal, which is normally a deal that is very hard to get out of, especially when he was not even close to completing it. According to Cam, to get out of this deal, he and dozens of other people went into the office of Sony Music every day and annoyed, or even some people would even go as far as to say, harass the employees. Keep in mind, Sony Music is the parent company of Epic Records. Cam and his people going up to Sony every day lasted a little minute, but eventually he was let out of his deal with Epic Records. Initially, Camron did not want to join Dame Dash's roc-a-fella record label, but he ended up signing. Camron was dead broke when he signed to roc-a-fella Records at the very end of 2001. He once told a story of freshly signing to roc-a-fella Records and he lost a $10,000 check in front of Baseline Studios, which was basically the home studio of the label. Freekey Zeekey and Cam were searching all over for the check and they eventually found it underneath the car. Now under roc-a-fella, Camron wasted no time in releasing his first album on the label, Come Home With Me. This was released in May of 2002. The album peaked at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 226,000 copies. Freekey, Jim Jones, and Juelz all appear on this album on various songs. The most notable song aside from Oh Boy is Hey Ma, which Juelz and Freekey Zeekey appears on.
Hey Ma, let's slide. Alright, and we gon' get it on tonight.
Hey Ma peaked at number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100, while Oh Boy peaked at number 4 on the same chart. Now with Camron out of the way, he really wanted to focus on establishing Juelz as an artist and get Jim Jones established also as an artist and a director as well. Juelz would feature on Oh Boy and Hey Ma, which would be a huge look for him at the time, with those being top 5 records in the country. Jim Jones would also feature on the Come Home With Me album, as well as being credited as a director for the Oh Boy Boy and Hey Ma music videos. It was not Jim's original plan to be a rapper due to him having aspirations of being behind the scenes. It wasn't until he started seeing the money that people like Cam and Mace were making from shows that he decided that he wanted to be a rapper as well. In fact, it was Mace who actually taught Jim Jones how to rap. He always credits Mace for that, and he also credits Juelz and Cam for being inspirations as well. Some people question what exactly does Freekey Zeekey do in the group, or how did he ever even get involved. Camron has known Freekey for a long time, and Cam told him that once he got a record deal, he was taking Freekey Zeekey on tour. People closely associated with Dipset throughout the years have described Freekey Zeekey as being hilarious and a joyous person to be around. Many people just think that Freekey Zeekey was merely a hype man, but that was not the case. In an interview with Bag Fuel in 2023, Freekey said that every person had a role in Dipset, with him having many different roles. Aside from being a hype man, he was an enforcer, consoler, and check writer, among other things. Can't forget to mention that he was the president of Diplomat Records. But back to 2002, and aside from Cam's debut album, this was a big year for Dipset, with the group dropping 3 mixtapes, with those being Diplomats Volume 1, 2, and 3. Their first mixtape, the Diplomats Volume 1, originally released in early 2002. One of my favorite songs from this tape has to be the remix to Dial M for Murder.
Gorilla the term, mathematician, subtraction, addition, division, to the packs and the cracks in the kitchen.
The Diplomat Volume tapes were hosted by DJ K Slay, rest in peace, a renowned hip-hop DJ widely known for his mixtapes. His mixtapes were so hot back then that Camron reached out to him to start the Diplomat Volume series. Even before the series, Dipset did freestyles for K Slay, with one of the most notable ones being the 2001 Dynasty freestyle.
I'll catch you while you parallel parking. Gun in each hand, start parallel sparking.
Diplomats Volume 2 released later that year, and this was released around when Camron had problems with Nas, which the members of Dipset inherited. The intro of the mixtape is an interview that Nas did on Power 105 in 2002. In the interview, he talked about how he thought that Camron was a good lyricist, but his album Come Home With Me was whack, and he needed to rap about things with more substance. Cam and his crew did not take too kindly to these words and responded with the song Hate Me Now over Nas's song of the same name. Very good diss song, but I do think that the line that Cam said about doing the R. Kelly to Nas's daughter was way too far. Way too far. Definitely out of bounds, 100%, no doubt about it. Show You How remix over the Jay-Z song of the same name was another track aimed at Nas from this mixtape. Now, I don't want to go too deep into the beef with Nas, but I do think that this was very preventable and did not have to go as far as it did. With that being said, I will say that I definitely do get a good laugh every time I hear Jim Jones say that he would smack the kufi off of Nas. After the release of Diplomats Volume 2 comes the third installment in the series. Many classic songs on the tape, but without a doubt, one of my favorite tracks has to be It's More Than Music.
I'm a star standing next to a star. See me, you see Cam, you see a car next to a car.
Dipset really lit up the streets in 2002 with the first 3 tapes in the Diplomats Volume series. Cam was also still hot musically, with Come Home With Me doing so well that year. Before I get to Dipset's debut album, I do want to touch on some info that not a lot of people know. Diplomatic Immunity was originally named Ground Zero and was supposed to release in October of 2002. Bout It Part 3 was set to be the first single for the album. The song Built This City was planned to be the second single. Ground Zero, the album, was set to be a dedication to New York after 9/11. Jim Jones, in an interview with MTV in 2002, explained that the making of the album Ground Zero started around 9/11. Ground Zero went on to become Diplomatic Immunity, and as we know, the album did not come out in October of 2002 like it was initially supposed to. December of 2002 was another planned date for the project, but it would be delayed until 2003. So Diplomatic Immunity could have came out way sooner if it wasn't for delays. Another fun fact is that Dipset were planning to have their own movie called Come Home With Me, which Jim Jones was set to direct. They were supposed to film the movie before the end of the summer in 2002. The movie was about Dipset and their story of how they came up in the hood to their transition to music. Jim Jones compared the movie to being similar to Master P's 1997 movie I'm 'Bout It and Jay-Z's 1998 movie Streets Is Watching. The difference is that the Dipset movie was going to be more focused according to Jim Jones. This movie ended up never coming out as intended. It definitely makes sense why Dipset would want to have a movie at the time, because roc-a-fella put out 3 movies in 2002 alone and was working on another movie in 2003 which came out to be called Death of a Dynasty. As some people may already know, State Property, which was a group that was also signed to roc-a-fella, had their own movie. Their movie came out in 2002 and went on to become a hood classic. It even spawned a sequel in which members of Dipset appeared in. It would have been cool to see a Dipset movie at this time, but at the same time, their come up isn't something that we already haven't seen in movie form. But around the time of the release of their debut album came the release of Diplomats Volume 4, a bunch of really good tracks on this mixtape. You Oughta Know, You're Gonna Love Me, Fly Boys, etc. Diplomats Volume 5 also released in 2003, giving us songs like Crown Me, Picture Perfect, and Halftime Show. The Diplomats' debut album, Diplomatic Immunity, finally released in March of 2003, peaking at number 8 on the Billboard 200, selling 92,000 copies in its first week. This album really represents a lot to the members of Dipset, because going into this album, they really had a chip on their shoulder. About Diplomatic Immunity, Jim Jones once said, "That album showed people you can never let anything stop your dreams. It don't matter where you at in the world, cause we started from the bottom of the bottom in the projects with nothing to offer. We had to get everything and earn everything. So for us to be here and overcome all the things that we did and all the great things we accomplished is everything." That album was the beginning of an era that changed the face of hip hop. But this is a classic debut double album from the group. A good amount of the songs that appear on the album were mixtape songs. I Really Mean It, Bout It Part 3, I'm Ready, More Than Music, and Juelz Santana the Great are just some examples. The biggest song that came from the album is without a doubt Dipset Anthem.
Today's a new day, got the booty up in the suitcase, so go uptown to Harlem, tell them that I sent ya.
As great as this song is, there was a chance that it could have never came out. Arsonist, one half of the production duo The Heatmakers, who produced a good amount on the album, said in an interview that he was moments away from throwing away the Dipset Anthem beat when his cousin walked in the studio. His cousin called him crazy for trying to get rid of the beat, which was originally made in 2001, 2 years before it would appear on Diplomatic Immunity. Down the line, the song ended up getting made, but the track was also moments away from missing out on the final track listing for Diplomatic Immunity. It was handed into Def Jam right before the deadline. Arsonist credits the song for making the final track list due to Camron's request being approved due to his excitement over the record. By this time, Camron had generated goodwill among the boardroom suits due to his debut album on roc-a-fella going platinum in December of 2002. But after all of this, Arsonist still feels like people at the top did not fully see the potential of the Diplomats or the song Dipset Anthem. He called it a fight to get their music out there. Once again, I've done a whole video breaking down this entire album top to bottom if you would like to know more. I can't explain how influential and impactful this album was and still is to this day. A month after diplomatic immunity, in April of 2003, trouble reared its head when Freekey Zeekey was involved in a car accident that ended in gunfire, leaving him wounded and his friend dead. Freekey Zeekey has recounted this event multiple times, and while it's a very serious situation, Freekey Zeekey just tells the story just hilariously. I don't even know how to explain it. The way that he tells stories is just off the wall. Years after the fact, Freekey Zeekey would go viral for his account of the situation from his appearance on Quiet Room in 2020. He reenacted how he put one of the men involved in a full Nelson and swung his body, leaving him open to get shot. Freekey Zeekey has also explained the situation on Smack DVD around when everything happened.
4 guns in a blaze of fire. Freekey got one of the niggas already, took the gun, put him in a full Nelson. Now he's my shield. I'm holding him back and forth, holding him back and forth, holding him back and forth. They got close though, I can't lie, man. They did hit me, man. They was close. You see how close I am right now? That's how close these motherfuckers was up on me. See? They hit me on the side right here. It's getting better now, you know what I'm saying? Take a look at all of them. It's still open. See that? I'm on the streets. It's still open. You seeing all of that right there?
I really do not want to get into the snitch allegations from this case because I just don't really care about the laws of the streets as a civilian, but Freekey Zeekey has denied all of these claims. But later on in 2003, the group released the mixtape Dipset Bird Gang Volume 1, All Eyes on Zeek. In the intro of the tape, it said that the purpose of the tape was to set the record straight about Freekey Zeekey. But as you can also tell by the title of the mixtape, this was the introduction of Bird Gang. The Bird Gang is a subgroup of Dipset spearheaded by Jim Jones. The debut album of Bird Gang did not come out until years later, but this mixtape also has appearances from J.R. Ryder, 40 Cal, and Unkasa. J.R. Ryder, the writer of writers, met Camron when he was still a teenager. He met him right after the photo shoot for Diplomats Volume 1, which means that this happened around early 2002. After rapping for Cam, he was impressed and told JR to stick around, which ultimately led him to being a part of Dipset and Diplomat Records. For 40 Cal, he's from the same building that Cam grew up in and got his start by offering Cam free weed in exchange for hearing his bars. Camron listened to 40 Cal rap and he liked his rhymes so much that he paid for the weed even though it was offered to him for free. Now, Hell Rel does not appear on this mixtape, but he did appear on Diplomatic Immunity. Sometime during the making of the album, Hell Rel got locked up and ended up serving a sentence on drug-related charges. In the Hell Rel interlude on the album, he freestyled over the phone while he was locked up. This is one of 2 jail freestyles he would have on this album. He did end up recording verses prior to being locked up, so this is how you end up hearing him on songs on the album such as This Is What I Do and Built This City. Hell Rel met Cam through Luca Brasi, and I believe he's not the only person who met him through Luca Brasi. For those who do not know who Luca is, he was a very integral part to Dipset. Camron is a great friend of mine, so is Juelz and Jim. That's an imperative role. We could be here for hours with that. Manage, market, promote. I did a lot of things with the Diplomats to raise their career at the time and the hype. At the time, I was on 145th and Broadway. I was selling CDs at a rapid rate. That was the mixtape era. At the time, Camron, I and DJ K Slay did a mixtape called The Diplomats. That was the pinnacle for rap right there at that era for the Diplomats. I played a very blunt instrument in the whole diplomatic movement. Luca Brasi, I was in every song. Luca, Taliban, that was me. Luca, 145th and Broadway. Back to the Dipset Bird Gang Volume 1 All Eyes on Me tape, and one of my favorite songs from this tape has to be Right Now.
Hocus pocus, I hold a toaster. I wake up in cold sweats, I notice ghosts. The ghost approaches. He spoke, said me being asleep awoke him. I ain't understand.
Outside of Camron, Juelz was the first person from Dipset to release a solo album with the release of From Me to You in August of 2003. This was through Diplomat Records in conjunction with roc-a-fella Def Jam. It's very apparent that Camron was the star of the group, with hopes of Juelz one day taking that top spot. Juelz Santana was also around 21 when the album dropped, so he was still very young. 2004 came around, and this ended up being a very eventful year for Dipset. Early on this year, Freekey Zeekey was convicted for running an ecstasy ring. He would not be released until 2006. Freekey Zeekey said this about the situation. It was basically me running the streets trying to keep Diplomat Records afloat, because even though we were in videos looking good, the glitter wasn't really gold, because once we were with Sony, when Cam did his 2 albums with Sony, was running entertainment under the label we was on, he made a lot of wrong moves and put us in debt. $4.4 million, and no Key Food job, no regular Foot Locker job would have gotten us out of that. I hit the streets for a cause. It wasn't so much to glorify the fact that being in the streets is something you need to do, and that's the hot hip thing. It was actually to feed my family and keep us afloat. Thanks to Dame Dash, he saw how hard we was going and he brought us out of our debt. Unfortunately, during that time, I got nabbed by the police. Not that long after this, Camron and Jim Jones secured national distribution for their purple cognac-based punch called Sizzurp. In other news this year, Dipset also added more members, but this time they were from overseas. They added brothers Mega and Mayhem, also known as the duo SAS. For those who do not know, Dipset had a lot of fans in the UK, especially during their peak. Not even just in the UK, but they have strong ties just about everywhere. The group SAS were from North London, but had ties to New York and got signed to roc-a-fella Records. Being on the same label, Cam and Dipset took a liking to the duo and wanted representation for Dipset overseas. In 2004, SAS released The Diplomats Presents SAS Who Dares Wins. More on this group later, but in the fall of 2004, Jim Jones released his debut album On My Way to Church through Diplomat and Koch Records. Now all of the core members aside from Freekey Zeekey had deals and released their debut albums. With those members situated, it was time to double back and release the sequel to Diplomatic Immunity. Diplomatic Immunity 2 released in November of 2004 and peaked at number 46 on the Billboard 200. Unlike the first one, this project was through Diplomat and Koch Records rather than it being through roc-a-fella and Island Def Jam. Aside from the core members of the group, this is when we saw the appearances of people like SAS, 40 Cal, Hell Rel, Jaja, and J.R. Ryder. I do think that people can agree that this album is not touching the first one at all, but there are still some good songs on it. Santana, Get Used to This, and Bigger Picture are some examples. The biggest song to come from this tape is Crunk Music.
Human crack in the flesh. I'm the last of the best. One word to describe me, spectacular. Yes.
The same month Diplomatic Immunity 2 released came the release of Dipset Bird Gang Volume 2, The New Season. The next month in December, things took a mean left for Dipset behind the scenes due to the rising tensions at roc-a-fella Records. By the end of 2004, the heads of roc-a-fella split and made a lot of people choose sides between being Team Jay-Z or Team Dame Dash and Cream Biggs Burke. When Camron and Dipset joined the label, it caused a lot of tension due to their behavior on the label and the problems that Cam and Jay-Z had.
When they first got there, it was a little tricky.
Roc-a-fella gave the Diplomats a label, and we gave State Property a label. But Cam was moving a little quicker than Beans. I told Beans, I'm gonna make you a vice president. Cam, I'm gonna make you a vice president. But the way a boss does, Cam went to the radio, quick, just when we were discussing it, and told the whole world. We hadn't even negotiated it. So now, everybody on the label, I'm talking about everybody, is like, what, I gotta ask him for videos now?
They was Dame friends, so I guess the tension between Jay and Dame came. They was trying to give Cam a vice president position or something like that. And Vito was out of town, so when Vito flew in, he was like, whoa, what's going on? We was cool, like State Property and Dipset got along. We was all coming from the same place, so it wasn't no tension between us.
We always were bosses. Now we on Roc-a-fella. We like, what do you do?
It was like, nah, Dame like a big brother. We going crazy in this shit. You can't tell us no. Who gonna tell us no? We went dumb in Roc-a-fella.
Dipset really ran wild on Roc-a-fella and did a lot in a short amount of time. People gotta realize that Camron signed to Roc-a-fella in December of 2001. He dropped his first album with the label in May of 2002, and the Dipset album came out in 2003. By 2004, the label was officially split. In 2004, Jay-Z, Dame Dash, and Kareem Biggs Burke, who all co-founded the label, sold their remaining 50% stake in Roc-a-fella Records to its parent label, Island Def Jam. The trio originally sold a 50% stake in their company to Island Def Jam in 1997, so they just sold the rest that they already had. As a result of this deal, Jay-Z ended up being announced as the president and CEO of Def Jam Records. As part of the deal, Jay-Z continued to run Roc-a-fella without Dame Dash and Biggs. Now, how exactly the split happened has been debated. What we do know is that Camron and Jimmy ended up siding with Dame Dash and would no longer be on Roc-a-fella Records after the release of Camron's album Purple Haze. Jim Jones was already a solo artist on Koch Records, and after the split with Roc-a-fella, Camron signed a deal with Asylum Records. Juelz Santana stayed with Def Jam, and his reasoning was that he still wanted a big machine behind him. At the beginning of 2005, Purple City released the project Road to the Riches, the best of the Purple City mixtapes. Purple City was a Dipset affiliated group with members like Unkasa, a.k.a, and Shiest Bub. They all appeared on multiple Dipset songs and projects. The most popular song from their Road to the Riches project has to be Purple City Bird Gang.
Dipset, that Purple City Bird Gang. Hard body, that Purple City Bird Gang.
The Memorial Day mixtape dropped not that long after this, and that was followed by Diplomats and Duke the God Presents More Than Music Volume 1. This project released in July of that year. There are some notable songs on here like The Best Out and If You Only Believe. Duke the God is notable for being the vice president of A&R at Diplomat Records and has known Cam since way back. 2005 also brought the release of Diplomats Present The Purple Bunch. The best song in my opinion from this tape is You Oughta Know.
I get head with the lights on, lights out. I used to drop Lewinsky off at the White House.
Juelz Santana and Jimmy also put out solo albums this year. Jim Jones with his album Harlem Diary of a Summer, and Juelz with his last album to date, What the Game's Been Missing. Camron was supposed to drop his first album through Warner Music under the Asylum Records imprint this year, but an incident in October of 2005 put those plans into question. While in Washington, D.C., Camron was the victim of a failed carjacking. Cam was shot in both arms after a Howard homecoming party while waiting at a red light in his royal blue Lamborghini Gallardo with over $200,000 worth of jewelry on. Immediately after being shot, Camron somehow managed to get away and drove himself to the hospital. He was treated and released from the hospital not that long after. Despite being shot, Camron was still promoting his upcoming album and said that it would release in November of 2005. This would not be the case, and his next album, Killer Season, did not come out until May of 2006. Alongside the release of the album Killer Season, Camron also released his first film, in which he wrote, directed, and starred in, also titled Killer Season. The movie is definitely rough around the edges, but it's still a hood classic, and it is very hilarious. Camron spitting on that little girl will always make me crack up. Right before Killer Season dropped, the project Camron Presents Duke the God, Dipset The Movement Moves On released. Camron was having a good 2006, but Jim Jones ended up having a monstrous year thanks to his smash hit single, We Fly High, Ballin'. This song was massively popular, with a huge thank you to the New York Giants. We Fly High, Ballin' peaked at number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100. Jim Jones was getting his time in the spotlight now, and the good news kept on coming with the release of Freekey Zeekey from prison in November of 2006. It was reported that after he got out, he signed a multi-million-dollar deal with Asylum Records in conjunction with Diplomat Records. Closing out 2006, Dipset released their Christmas compilation album, A Dipset Xmas, in conjunction with Bird Gang. At this time, Bird Gang consisted of Stack Bundles, Max B, and Mel Matrix. They were introduced earlier in 2006 with the release of Jim Jones Presents MOB, Members of Bird Gang. Now at the beginning of 2007, Camron and 50 Cent had a live argument on the Angie Martinez show on Hot 97 Radio. 50 Cent stated that he felt that Koch Records was a graveyard, meaning that major record labels would not want to work with their artist. Keep in mind that Jim Jones was with Koch Records at the time. Camron then jumped on the line and roasted the record sales of artists on 50 Cent's label, such as Lloyd Banks and Mobb Deep. Camron pointed out that Jim Jones outsold both of their artists despite not being signed to a major label, and also went on to clarify that his group, the Diplomats, had a distribution deal from several labels. Unlike the Nas beef though, this beef with 50 Cent ultimately cost Camron a lot in the long run, and it changed Dipset as a whole. Plus, this beef came at a terrible time for him. Cam's mother had suffered multiple strokes, which left her paralyzed on her left side, and she had a speech impediment. He moved to Florida with her to set up her rehabilitation and therapy, and he stayed there until she fully recovered. He did not drop another solo album until 2009. Further about 2007 though, and the release of Duke the God Presents Dipset More Than Music Volume 2 came out in May of that year. Upon looking at the track list for the tape, you might recognize a familiar name, which is Cat Williams, the legendary comedian. Fans of Dipset would know that Cat Williams was really down with the set. Due to Cat's recent surge in popularity due to his appearance on Club Shay Shay at the very beginning of this year, many people have revisited this time in his career. On More Than Music Volume 2, Cat Williams appears on the song Get That Money with J.R. Ryder.
Got so many haters, I do not need gators. I can slide and flip-flop like I slid through hip-hop.
But Dipset not only had one of the hottest comedians in the game under their wing, but they were also affiliated with the hottest rapper in the game back in 2007, which was Lil Wayne. On his classic 2007 mixtape, The Drought 3, he has songs titled Dipset and Dipset 2. He also shouted out Dip South on the mixtape as well. Jim Jones has said that Lil Wayne spent a summer with Dipset, and that summer revamped his style. Juelz and Lil Wayne were also very close and had plans to release a mixtape titled Can't Feel My Face, which still has yet to release. Back to the timeline though, and a couple months after the release of More Than Music Volume 2, Freekey Zeekey finally dropped his debut album in July. Hell Rell dropped his debut album For the Hell of It as well, and J.R. Writer also dropped his debut album a year prior in 2006. While 2007 started out good, this year proved to be the beginning of the end for Dipset. It really started in 2006, but 2007 is when things became public. Years after the fact, Jim Jones spoke about an incident that occurred in 2006 that cracked his friendship with Camron. Essentially, Jim Jones started dating his longtime girlfriend Chrissy for only a few weeks when he started to shower with lavish gifts. Because of this, Camron started making fun of Jim Jones, and he made Tricky Ricky t-shirts because he felt that Jim Jones was tricking. Jimmy did not take too kindly to this, and he felt very disrespected by what Cam did. The next year in 2007, Jim Jones said this about Camron. Me and Camron haven't spoken to each other in a year. I kept quiet out of loyalty. I felt like if we can't be friends, then at least we can do business together. But now I can't be next to you. I'm through with being in hot water because of you. We still the Diplomats. We worked too hard to achieve our own success, and now we're gonna do something new. The divide between the two grew bigger when Jim Jones and Juelz Santana appeared on stage with 50 Cent in the middle of Cam and 50 Cent still beefing. This greatly upset Camron. Jim Jones said that he was in contact with 50 because he was trying to figure out how to get a quote-unquote super bag with G-Unit. This is something that Jim Jones recently said on Quiet Room just a year ago in 2023. In a separate interview, Juelz Santana said that he joined Jim Jones on stage because he was there to support Jim and make sure that he was okay. Juelz Santana and Camron would have their own problems the next year in 2008 when it was reported that Camron sold Juelz Santana's contract to Def Jam for $2 million. So now Juelz Santana was strictly under Def Jam and was not tied to Diplomat Records as a solo artist. Juelz Santana did not have any hard feelings on the surface about this, and he thanked Cam for giving him an opportunity. He did say that he was loyal to Cam, which he took advantage of. Now with Dipset being in disarray, Juelz Santana managed to form his own group, which was Skull Gang. Unfortunately for him, the group never really took off and wasn't as successful as Jim Jones' Bird Gang, which had promising stars like Max B and Stack Bundles. Both of their stories ended tragically, and I've already made a video on both of them, so link in the description. Unfortunately for Juelz though, this year he faced the consequences from events that happened all the way back in 2004. In 2004, Camron was booked for a show in the UK for upwards of 6 figures but did not show up, which left the promoters pissed. When Juelz Santana toured Europe in 2008, the promoters from 4 years ago never forgot what Cam did, and a mob surrounded Juelz outside of his hotel. In an interview, Juelz said that his former manager accepted a large amount of money for a paid date that never happened. The UK goons ended up holding Juelz at a location outside of his hotel until an agreement was met.
I mean, I know y'all mad out there, baby. Come here. Cartel. That's all kizzy wimpy. All day, every fucking day. Better realize, innit?
J.R. Writer was over there too, and you can tell that Juelz and J.R. Writer were really uncomfortable with all those UK goons around them, and I mean like rightfully so. I made a short video about this and people were clowning their accents, but do not be fooled because things could have definitely went left. Also, this situation severely damaged the relationship between SAS and other members of Dipset. But 2009 is when Camron returned to music after not dropping an album in 3 years. He returned with Crime Pays in May of 2009. Upon his return, Cam appeared on the Angie Martinez show on Hot 97 when he said that he had not spoke to Jim Jones in 3 years. He also said that their relationship would never be the same because once a problem gets into the public, it can't be fixed. Despite what Cam said, Jim Jones suggested a reunion this year, and this reunion did not come into fruition until 2010. The song Salute signified their reunion.
Catch me driving a Phantom like it's a sports car. Two-door, drop head, topless, sports bra, red bone.
I have no clue how people felt about this song in 2010, but this song goes crazy. Jim Jones really stepped up his game, and A-Rap Music made a wild beat. But a lot of plans were in the works around this time, with rumors of Dipset possibly signing to Interscope Records. It's confirmed that the group did work with Dr. Dre, and members like Freekey Zeekey and Juelz Santana said in interviews that they were signed. Whether they got signed or not, whatever they had with Interscope got deaded in 2013. In an interview with Vlad TV in 2013, Freekey Zeekey said that Juelz Santana had personal problems which prevented him from hitting the studio a lot. He suggested that it was because in 2011, Juelz Santana's studio in New Jersey got raided. According to Juelz, when police returned his property back to him, his hard drives were erased. He lost hundreds of songs because of this. The raid and losing all this music deeply depressed Juelz Santana. After the Interscope thing, a reunion album and a movie about the group got talked about for years. In 2015, it was announced that Dipset would go on a 5-stop club tour with the mixtape concluding the tour. Well, they did follow up on the promise of dropping a project this year, which was American Dream. While this is labeled a mixtape, it's more like a compilation and showcases a bunch of different artists. Not quite what fans were expecting. After this, the crew hit a rough patch again due to Jim Jones and Camron's constant feuding, but they seemingly got it back together in 2017 after releasing the song Once Upon a Time.
80 for the jet to meet with Jay and then I flew back. The ace of spades and put up on my tab an extra 2 stacks.
After releasing the song, it was announced that an EP and a documentary were coming in the near future. The very next year, in 2017, Dipset released their first album in over 14 years. Diplomatic Ties dropped in November of 2004. I was really hyped for this album when it dropped, and upon listening, I was really impressed by how much Jim Jones improved his game. To me, he was the MVP of the album, which was a stark contrast to how things were back when Dipset were in their prime. Don't get me wrong, I feel like Jim Jones had some solid verses back in the day, like his verses on songs like Fly Boys, I'm Ready, and The First. He came a long way from his Dynasty freestyle, I can definitely say that. The highlight of Diplomatic Ties, to me, is definitely the song Dipset Forever.
The only thing certain in life is death, so that's true. Till I go, I'ma work till I'm out of breath, cause
after the release of this album, the last noteworthy thing that I really want to talk about is Dipset's verses with the Lox. This occurred in 2021, and this was another thing that I was really hyped for, but got left very disappointed. As a big Dipset fan, I thought that they were going to win because catalog for catalog, I thought that they had the advantage. Might be cope, but I still think that, and they came very unprepared, which members of the group have admitted. Dipset were concerned more about what they wore to the event rather than what they were performing. Jadakiss alone ate them alive. I do think that people put too much emphasis on this versus like it was a championship game or something. Versus is supposed to be all in good fun, but yeah, I will admit that Dipset did look bad on that stage. I don't think that that should take away from their legacy at all, and if it does for you, then I don't know what to say. Like, that's kind of crazy to me. But some fans were disappointed that only the core members were a part of the verses and did not have appearances from people like 40 Cal, J.R. Ryder, and Hell Rel. In the past, these members have had issues with the core members, notably feeling slighted after not appearing on Dipset's reunion album, Diplomatic Ties. Not that long after that album dropped, 40 Cal, J.R. Ryder, and Hell Rel dropped the track titled No Reunions. Years later, they didn't get invited on stage to the verses, even though I think at least J.R. Writer was in the building. But yeah. Outside of the other members of Dipset, the state of the core members of Dipset is still in a bit of disarray, with reports of Camron not speaking to Jim Jones since the verses. These two seemingly still have problems to this day, so who knows when or if they'll ever patch things up. I firmly believe that Dipset is one of the greatest and most influential rap groups of all time. The impact and influence they had and still have is off the charts. Dipset commonly referred to themselves not being a crew and more like a movement. People wanted to be a part of Dipset and what they had going on. Like I said earlier, they had Cat Williams, one of the hottest comedians, especially at that time, down with Dipset. They also had Lil Wayne, one of, if not the hottest rappers at the time, repping Dipset. Unlike other people, Dipset were beloved everywhere. They're from New York, but people from everywhere loved them. They were doing records with The Game out west, had records with Lil Wayne and Master P down south, and they have deep ties in Chicago and Ohio, in the Midwest specifically. Can't forget to mention that they were huge overseas in the UK as well. Their influence when it comes to fashion has always been talked about and credited when it comes to talking about their greatness. It's even crazier that they helped change the face of fashion twice. Went from wearing jerseys and 5X white tees to rockstar type clothing with skulls and bones on them. Musically, Diplomatic Immunity, their greatest album, really changed the game and is one of the best double disc albums in rap history, especially from a rap group. Definitely defines that era and it still sounds great to this day. Kinda sucks that their reign was not longer, which is something that they get flack for, but for the time that they did have in their prime, they really did a lot. The mixtapes, the DVDs, albums, magazines, etc. All of that good stuff. I can go on and on for days and days talking about Dipset, one of the greatest to ever do it, and their music will live on forever. But all in all, let me know what you thought of the video in the comment section below. I love you guys with all my heart. Peace.